And that one is shot out of a cannon to right field. A towering home run for Joey Votto, number 300. And the Reds take a 3-2 lead.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Late Night Reds Talk. We are excited to be here talking about our beloved Redlegs as they had a 1-0 extra innings Jesse Winker walk-off victory today. That's the good news. Sonny Gray pitches a gem of 7 innings. That's the good news. There is some bad news, and we'll get to that later. But first we get into that, let's go ahead and introduce the panel. Starting with the Mr. Statistics himself, Nick Kirby. Nick, thank you so much for filling in last week. You did a hell of a job hosting, man, so I really appreciate your work.
Yeah, thanks. It's a lot more nervous than I thought, doing the host duties. You have to, move the show along. It's definitely a lot easier just to be the guy who answers the questions, so I'm glad to be back in that chair tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad to fill that role for you, man. I'm glad to do it. And, of course, you've heard him on here a couple times talking with us, so we figured we liked him enough. Why not make him part of the panel? This is Mr. Carlos Guevara. Carlos, man, I'm so happy you're going to be part of the regular team now, and I know we got a lot of fun Red stuff to talk about.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me and allowing me to join this little group that we have chatting about the Reds. It's fun to be able to, just come out here on a weekly basis and talk Reds baseball.
Yes, absolutely. So, Carlos, before we do get into it, I texted you about this earlier, and I just had to bring it up. I'm a sucker for Baseball Reference. I think a lot of people are who follow this sport. And, of course, now that you were working together, I did a little Carlos Guevara Baseball Reference search. And I found your 2006 Chattanooga Lookouts team that went 81-59 that year.
Oh, man,
why were you guys so loaded? Also, how did Joey lead the team in stolen bases?
Excuse me?
Joey led the team in stolen bases that year.
Oh, that's a trivia question I would have got wrong 100 times in a row.
Yeah, he had 24. Chris Dickerson had 21.
Joey had what?
24 stolen bases that year, according to Baseball Reference.
No way. I'm going to have to ask him about this. I don't believe it. But golly, man, we were stacked. That year was a lot of fun. There were so many big leaguers on there, and I mean, it was just kind of like it was almost like old school travel ball, like in high school. Like you knew how good of a team you had, and you were just going to roll up and kick somebody's ass. Like it didn't matter who they put in front of us, we were going to win. We knew we were going to win. That team was just stacked. It was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, so there's some of the major leaguers who were on that team. Like we mentioned, Joey Votto, Chris Dickerson, Homer Bailey, Matt Belisle, the pitching staff, Ryan Hannigan. You guys
don't you dare forget Paul Giannis. Don't you dare
Paul Giannis.
Giannis, Miguel Perez. I don't know if y'all remember him, but he had a little cup of coffee in the big leagues.
Dwayne Wise was on that team?
Yeah, D. Wise.
Dwayne Wise.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there are so many people.
Yeah. So if anyone out there is listening, ever wants to check out a very interesting 2006 Chattanooga Lookouts, that is a major league roster. And they were pretty fun, if you look at the team. So let's go ahead and go into this current team, guys. So last we talked was right before the Cubs series, obviously. The Reds have a good stand against Chicago. I know they had a big loss yesterday to the White Sox, but they took 2-3 from the Cubs and split with the White Sox, Nick. But the big thing, I want to talk about some good vibes when it comes to Joey before we talk about his thumb injury. Career 300 happens, and then Jesse Winker continues to have his very clutch at-bats. And, like I said today, the title of the show, Sonny Gray, 7 innings of just excellent baseball. What did you take away from the battles versus the Chicago teams?
It was a fun series. I don't think the Cubs are very good, but it felt like a really good competitive series. Big stretch from the Reds. I mean, 5-3 may not look super sexy, but when you go 5-3 against the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the White Sox, I mean, those were 3 legitimate playoff teams. Teams that were think each of those teams had over 35 wins in a 60-game season last year. So, big stretch for the Reds, bouncing back from that 7-game losing streak. Now the Reds have a series against the Indians, but then they got the Rockies and Pirates. Like I said a million times, you never want to count wins, but hopefully this is the Reds are building a little bit of, I hate the word momentum, but build a little bit of momentum, going into a favorable stretch for them, and hopefully they can they're in the race right now, but really put some pressure back on the Cardinals and Brewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Carlos, when you look at this team and the rotation, I know Jeff Hoffman didn't have his best day. And obviously a crazy 13 to 12 game Sunday where Tyler Mahle has his first rough outing of the year. What really kind of jumped out to you that you saw that you liked mostly from these Chicago series, what we saw from the rotation?
I know Mahle didn't have his best stuff, but you could tell that he was battling out there. That's always a positive sign because, there's so many pitchers that if they don't have it and they're that mid-level 3, 4, 5 starters, that they just kind of just let it implode and let it get worse and worse and worse. And, stats aside, you could just tell he was just out there competing. He was upset. But, other than that, Sonny was amazing today. It looks like he's back. Hopefully we keep him healthy all year. Luis Castillo, he's coming back, man. He's gonna have a good, strong rest of the year. I can tell already. Wade Miley, he's Wade Miley. We know what we're gonna get from him. We can get 7 innings of 1 run game, or we could get 5 innings of 4 runs. We know that. All we ask is for some consistency, and hopefully they can find something with the number 4 guys, or number 5 guys. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hoffman's been fine, but I think we kind of, I don't know. Did you guys kind of feel like what we saw at the beginning of the year when he was throwing those good 5-inning games? Do you guys? I'm trying to get kind of your insight, both of you. Do you feel like that's who he is? Do you feel like it was potential of overachieving? Because, like I said, this is the guy who came from Coors Field, so we don't really know what he can do there because everything's so different in Colorado.
I don't know. I haven't seen him pitch too much outside of what I've seen so far this year. But I almost feel like he'd be better off served in the bullpen. Having to throw his fastball a lot less. His breaking balls are his better pitches. But who you gonna put in that 5 slot? It's kind of tough right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can move Antone out of the bullpen. He's literally, I feel like, holding the entire bullpen together right now. I think you just kind of have to, for now, take your lumps from Hoffman. I think if you look at the StatCast numbers, the fielding independent, whatever peripheral we want to look at, Jeff Hoffman's not, an above average starter. But I think he's a guy that isn't going to, for sure be a guy who's going to get rocked every time out there. I think he'll probably have a couple good starts where he's, maybe a little, luckier or whatever. But you'll have some starts like, we saw yesterday against the White Sox. I think you just kind of have to live with that for right now. They don't have any other options that are ready. De Leon clearly isn't better than Hoffman. They can't go with a bullpen game because the bullpen's not deep, at least. I know Tony, I might say his name wrong. I apologize. Tony Santillan. Hopefully I said that right.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
He made his first start tonight for Louisville. I believe he went 4 innings. He's probably the guy the Reds will be looking at to put in the rotation. If when he gets up and he has some success at Louisville. But I think for right now they're going to ride out Jeff Hoffman as long as they can to where he's not killing them. And I think that's probably the best strategy is just to ride him out for now. And then if he's just getting you killed so much, then you maybe look at making a move. But I think for right now, it's the number 5 starter. There's worse in the league.
Yeah, definitely. So, Nick, we haven't had a chance to do a show since you finally got your wish of Nick Senzel playing some infield ball this past week.
It is possible. It is possible. I was told it wasn't possible a couple weeks ago. So I'm glad to see it. It's just he's so much more valuable if he can play multiple positions. It just makes his team so much more valuable. I'm so excited to see it. I hope they continue to do it. And I hope just because, Joey's out, it doesn't mean that they're going to just say, all right, put him back in center field. We can move other guys around. I'd like to see them keep playing him in the infield.
I'm pretty impressed with them lately. I know I talked about this like our second or third episode I read for opening day where, you're seeing them like work counts and how good he is at like drawing walks. You're really starting to see more and more of like, okay, this is the guy they took, in the first round, let alone number 2 overall. And like he's, he had a 4-hit game against the Dodgers today. He has that big hit to move the runner to third for Winker to have the walk-off single. I think he's been hitting like 400 the last 5 or 6 games that he's played. That's with splitting time with Tyler Naquin. I think you're really starting to see him coming to his own as a major league player. I mean, we're really talking about a guy who's really yet to play his 162nd major league game.
Yeah, I've seen some positive signs from Senzel. I think we're probably to the point where I think we can safely say, and I would gladly be happy to be proven wrong on this. I think we're probably safe to say Nick Senzel's not going to be a superstar. But I think he is developing into a quality major league player, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think he can maybe be an above average hitter. I still want to see more. I see a lot of people say, let's move Senzel up into the leadoff spot. His career numbers, versus right-handed pitching is still pretty rough. But he's a good defender, and if he can play multiple positions, he can be very, very valuable for this team. I don't think we're going to see him, be like a Chris Bryant or anything like that. I think his ceiling right now is maybe like a Jay Bruce, without the power, just kind of a different, way of going about it.
Sure, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, like I said, like you said, like a serviceable baseball player, you could do far worse, especially on this team when guys like Castellanos and Winker are hitting so well. There's a lot to be excited about with that team. I know India came back finally, and he played his first couple games since he got hit in the skull, which was scary. But I think I was really blown away with those two guys, especially how good they are defensively. And that wasn't anything we really necessarily had to worry about. But you can just see, like, when Senzel plays second base, he was making some really good plays. When India's in there, he played a hell of a defensive game today. I feel like with those guys, it's like kind of really the thing where they've really picked up the best so far in their major league career as they're still continuing to learn how to hit major league pitching.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Their defense has been great on a team that is not very good defensively. So when you can have that, and especially if you have guys that can play, multiple positions, I think that's a big thing. And really the Reds just need Senzel to be average. If Nick Senzel can be an average major league player, the Reds will be in good shape with their lineup.
Yeah, I agree. So Carlos, we'll bring you back to the conversation here with the unfortunate news. Your pal, your good friend Joey Votto, unfortunately fractures his thumb today, which is just a heartbreaker for all of us, obviously. Not just as far as like the baseball side of it, but the fact that like we're really seeing him hit the ball so hard and really kind of seeing him like really find himself like it looks like he's getting to a groove again. And obviously this happens. That's just the worst time possible. But for you, from a guy who's been around him, I'm sure when you guys were in the minors together, he had some probably minor like hit commitments here and there. I'm sure that was a rough for him, for a guy who just wants to play every day. What do you kind of feel like you remember from these times, like when he goes through stuff like this?
I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him yet today, but I know he's probably initially going to be really upset, really pissed off because he had he had a game plan for this year. It was going so well in the off season. It was a tough off season. Can't be around many people, especially in Toronto. I mean, those guys were on lockdown. But so it made it hard for him to train. He could I think he could travel maybe to one other person's home or something like that, just to train. And so he got through that, and he was so excited. Spring training, he's like, I'm hitting the ball hard. I'm doing what I want to do. And then, he catches COVID, and so it set him back, and he didn't know if he was going to make opening day roster. And then, he ends up making it, and the first couple of weeks he was. He started off pretty good, and then he's, just kept hitting the ball hard and nothing but positive things. And, he finally gets back into the groove again, and then now this happens. So it's going to be a bummer. So, he's going to have the best attitude here probably by tomorrow. What I got to do to get better. How can I improve anything else? But it's just tough to miss an entire year because he's always wants to play 162. He knows they're going to give off days, but more than likely he's still going to get an AB that day. So, to have 160, 162 at the end of the year is something that's really important to him. So it's kind of heartbreaking to see that that's not going to happen. But whenever he comes back, he's going to come back with a vengeance, I promise.
So, Nick, obviously we've talked a lot about flexibility on defense with this team, and this is kind of where it's got to be the biggest because there aren't really a whole lot of first base depth in the organization. We've talked about, Mike Moustakas has played some first base in his career. You've talked about the possibility of, we saw Tyler Stevenson play first base for a little bit last night in the blowout against the White Sox. Tucker Barnhart's played about 16 games of first base in his career. So, I guess the good news is that we have some flexibility there for that first base spot in this, but none of those guys necessarily defensively are Joey Votto, especially a game like today where he gets hurt. He has two really good plays at the first base. So, how do you kind of see this shaking out for the team moving forward?
Well, real quick, if I could speak on Votto real quick before we move on, man, it stinks this year because
Sucks.
Looking at Votto's Statcast page, his expected slugging percentage right now is .581. In 2017, remember the year he should have won the MVP, he finished second. It was .553. So he's almost 30 points higher with his expected slugging. I feel like the numbers hadn't caught up with Joey, but I feel like they were going to catch up with him as the summer went on, as it starts warming up, and that just really stinks. And it's heartbreaking, and I started thinking about Joey the other day when I said something I tweeted out something interesting to watch was how Votto kind of has a chance to break the Reds' extra base hit record. Mm-hmm. And I started to think Joey probably only has 2 more years after this year in Cincinnati. It's hard to see how the Reds are going to, pick up his option in 2024. So really, he's probably only got 2 more years left in Cincinnati after this one, unless they worked out some sort of, deal or whatever. But it's starting to, I guess, kind of sink in. For me, I'm sure it's sunk in for Joey. It's we're getting close to that. Luis Castillo is going to be here probably longer than Joey Votto. That's just, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I just wanted to add that on Joey, before we talk about the position. I think the Reds are equipped for first base. I think everyone's kind of freaking out. The Reds don't have a backup first baseman. Mike Moustakas is a backup first baseman. He can play first base. He's done fine when he's been there. He's played enough first base. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And as good as Joey has been at the plate, he has not been good defensively. So I don't think you're losing anything with Moustakas at first base. That should be the move, in my opinion, is playing Moustakas at first base, unless maybe you're playing Tyler Stevenson or you're moving Winker or Castellanos. I just don't see how midseason you're moving Winker or Castellanos, because I've heard no discussions of them, getting any reps there in spring. That's not something. I don't know if we remember when Jay Bruce tried to play first base midseason, how bad that went. That's kind of how I envision, if you try to put Jesse Winker there. So I think the move is you move Moustakas there, and then you play, India and Senzel at second and third base, whichever one those two are comfortable at. Let them rock, paper, scissors for it. I think that's the move. And then I think you're going to have three quality outfielders still with obviously Winker, Castellanos, and I think Naquin is deserving of playing every day against right-handed pitching. And then I think the plan was Shogo was going to come back the series after next, but maybe they bump him up to this weekend. But yeah, I think the Reds are more equipped to it than we might think. The one thing they can't do is they can't play Kyle Farmer every day.
Yes.
I don't understand. Like, he killed them when he played every day. Why was he playing every day? Moustakas when Moustakas was out. Like, he can't play every day. And this isn't third base that he's covering. This is first base that needs covered. The Reds should be able to do that with a better hitter than Kyle Farmer. No disrespect, Kyle.
Right, yeah. And, look, I get it. Every team has, their 26th guy. But, it's just kind of with, him. He gets opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And you haven't seen him really kind of, necessarily, I guess, is deliver the right word in this circumstance? Was that what we would say here? Because
hit?
I don't have... Yeah, hit. Thank you, Nick. That's the best one. Yeah. I guess that's the thing you're supposed to do in baseball is hit. And he hasn't really done a whole lot of that, especially, in LA or here. So I don't know. And maybe it's just look, I understand they can't bring up an Austin Hendrick yet. So I'm not saying that by any means, but it does kind of feel like is there no one down there that can take that role better than him?
I think the Reds' options that they have now are fine. I think the Reds have enough quality major league players to. I think the Reds, even with Votto out, I think the Reds have 9 legit major league players when Shogo comes back on the roster, maybe 10. They're not, playing a Patrick Kivlahan every day. These are all guys that have at least some potential there. You just got to be flexible and move them around, and I think the Reds are equipped for it.
Yeah, that's fair. So, Carlos, when you kind of look at this roster now, post, without Joey, obviously, which, we've all said, it all sucks, especially coming off his 300th homer and all the positive vibes we've been having. What kind of really, is there anything that jumps out to you more or less concerns you now that he's out of the lineup for a little while?
No, I don't think anything really concerns me. Personally, I'd like to see, Moose and Stevenson split time. I want to see Stevenson get some regular ABs, play in 5 games a week. I want to see him swing the bat. We don't really know what he has to offer. We've seen some great, spurts here and there, but we don't really know. It's hard to hit whenever you play every third, every fourth day. So
right.
I'd like to see this opportunity for him to be there because he is 6'4", so he's probably the leading candidate. I don't know if there's anybody in the minor leagues, but there aren't many 6'4" catchers out there.
Yeah, and there's obviously too the trend where catchers in their later years move to first base. We've seen Joe Mauer do it, Buster Posey. So I don't know. We just kind of get a little quick start on that in this circumstance, or
yeah, maybe. Moose can do fine over there, but they can put Blandino over there. He does fine, and Tucker. But those are little guys. It's a lot different throwing to those guys than there is somebody 6'2", 6'3". It can move around. I definitely don't think Winker or Castellanos are the option. Winker being the last, because I don't think Winker's the most athletic of the bunch.
The only thing that I would add to that, I'm sorry, real quick, is they definitely shouldn't be taking away starts behind the plate for Tyler to do this. He still needs, I don't think he's catching enough as it is. But he definitely, whatever plan they have right now, they need to at least still having him catching that many times. Because from everything I'm seeing, Tyler Stevens is going to be the starting catcher in 2022. So you need to see him catching more. Tucker Barnhart has a $7.5 million option. I don't see any way the Reds are picking that up. So I'm fine with Tyler Stevenson playing first base on the days that he's not going to start. But in terms of, it shouldn't be taking away from the games that he's supposed to catch. That's the only thing I want to make sure I add to that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Do you think it's kind of interesting that Castillo's best games have been with Stevens behind the plate, or do you think it's mere coincidence?
Oh, I think that's a coincidence for sure.
Okay. The only reason I ask, because, for some reason or another, I found myself listening to a lot of New York, New York. And I don't really care about the Yankees, but they keep talking about the fact that Garrett Cole doesn't have Gary Sanchez catch him. And, like, it's weird because it's the ace that doesn't have their best catcher catch him. So I don't know if it was something like that or not.
Well, I mean, if Barnhart hadn't caught him the last 3 years or however long he's been
Sure.
being great, then we might be able to have that conversation. But, I mean, he's been really, really good with Barnhart, so I think it's just purely just luck. And, I mean, but there are instances where, pitchers have a hard time throwing to catchers. I mean, whenever I was up there, like I love throwing to Michael Barrett, and Nick Hundley was the backup catcher, and I threw to him a little bit in AAA, and oh my God, I hated throwing to him. Like I've never hated throwing to a catcher as much as I throw it to him. Nothing on him. I mean, he was a great catcher. He hung around the big leagues for a while, a great guy. I just hated his setup, and I hated his glove. His glove looked like it was a 10-inch glove, and it was so small. And I hated it, but that was my catcher in the big leagues, and that's what I had to deal with.
Thanks for joining the chat, Nick Hudley.
Yeah. What's up, man?
The only thing I would add to that is I agree with Carlos. I think it's probably mostly dumb luck, but I do think it is at least enough to say, all right, we shouldn't be saying Castillo or whoever else has to pitch to Tucker Barnhart, because I don't think Tucker Barnhart, with some of the numbers, has shown that like there's a definite he has to be the guy catching or our pitching staff's going to fall apart. I think there's probably a little of both where, yeah, it's dumb luck, but I also think you can't use that as an excuse to, play Tucker more, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and if there were two people who could say who they wanted to catch, it would be Gray and Castillo, and that would 100% happen. Bell would play whoever they wanted to catch. So I don't think they have an issue throwing to either one.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just curious your guys' opinion on that. Hey, let's talk about it. Let's have some fun today. Let's laugh at Tony La Russa, guys. We talked about Votto's thumb injury. We've talked about some bad things. Let's talk about some good, fun things today. So first off, how about that top of the 10th when he has his closer on the bases and sends his runner on first base to try to steal on a pitch out, and then has Billy Hamilton strike out with the game-winning run on third? Pretty awesome. Way to go, Tony La Russa. You're really, really developing well to the current Major League game. And then also comes in a presser later and says he doesn't know the rules, I guess. And he's like, well, now I know. So I think like everyone that's a baseball fan kind of laughed at the idea that La Russa was getting hired to the White Sox, and today kind of showed why.
I have despised Tony La Russa for a long time. So seeing that 10th inning was just beautiful today. And honestly, I'll give La Russa a pass for not knowing that rule. I didn't know that rule. My thing is, how was no one on that coaching staff like, hey, Tony, your pitcher doesn't have to run? Like, you have, like, video guys. Like, how did no one know that? Like, that's the thing more so than Tony not knowing that. It's just, like, what are they doing,
That's what a bench coach is for.
Yeah, I'm sure Tony's livid. Like, you guys made me look stupid. And I don't think that one really was as much on Tony. I guess unless he picked his coaching staff, then I guess it's on him. But the thing that I just was like, well, the steal was pretty awful. Like, why are you stealing? You have the go-ahead run on third base with less than 2 outs. And Billy Hamilton's not going to ground into a double play. But the thing that was just mind-blowing was that they pitched to Jesse Winker. With Kyle Farmer on deck and Eugenio Suarez, who I love in the hole, but he's struggling and he's striking out 40% of the time. Like, what are you doing? Like, I was just like, okay, great. Like, the game's going to be over. And sure enough, it was over. Thank you, Tony.
I didn't get to see the last inning. That's when I started driving back home so I could pick up the kids. And I'm like, listen on the radio. And, listen on the radio, you try to visualize. And I'm Like, wait, what? Are the bases loaded? Why isn't Jesse getting walked? Wait, did I miss something here? Why is Billy Hamilton not bunting? Like, at the
Not
very
only
least,
that-
try to bunt and get it like a safety squeeze, or even if it is the pitcher. Could have been Bartolo Colon. I'm still bunting if I'm Billy Hamilton. Can't put the ball in play to save his life.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I was texting you guys earlier today, and I said, Billy Hamilton starting in center field. Carlos's text was, "Thank you, Tony La Russa." And sure enough,
I heard Billy's a great guy and everything, but holy cow, Tony,
That was
thank you.
That was one of those Dusty Baker. He always loved to start the guys in their hometown. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
like if a player was in their hometown, he was starting every game that series. Like Dusty loved that stuff. That's what Billy played today felt like.
Have you guys ever looked at his numbers since he left Cincinnati? Obviously, we knew he couldn't hit, but he's literally only had 30 stolen bases in the 4 years he's been away from the Reds.
How many games?
Like, he's played over 100 because he played a full season for the Royals.
Wow.
But I think a lot of those are defensive replacements, though. I don't know if he had like an actual at bat in a lot of those games. You can't steal first. I mean, that's Billy Hamilton. I loved him. I thought he was a great personality. He was
fun.
He was such an easy guy to root for. But the Cincinnati Reds handling of him is one of the most frustrating things that I've ever seen. Like, I do not understand how after 2 full seasons of him, his on-base percentage regressing each year, you don't send him down for a couple weeks and say, "Hey, Billy, you've got to be better than this if you want to play every day." I never understood why they just kept running him out here, running him out there, running him out there. And then you look, as soon as he leaves the Reds, he hasn't played more than he played 300 games in 2019. And he's not even close to a part-time player. One of the more frustrating handlings of a player. I don't know if they would have been able to make a difference, but just at least trying to have him improve always frustrated me that there was never any sort of okay, Billy, here's some accountability. You gotta, get on base at least 32% of the time,
Yeah, do you remember in 13 there was a little stretch where it was when Hamilton would play when they did the September call-up where him and Derek Robinson would be starting the order, and you're like, what the hell are you doing?
He was great in 2013. I mean, he only started three games. He had a 5-for-5 game. Oh man, I think we thought Billy Hamilton was gonna be the next superstar, and he was a nice player. Probably would have been fine if he batted ninth every game in an American League team, but batting leadoff, just brutal.
I mean, he's the real life version of say, "Hey, Willie Mays Hayes."
For real.
Great defensively, could run like the wind, but couldn't hit it out of the batting cage.
You may run like Mays, but you hit like shit. Nick, it's so funny because you talk about thinking he was going to be a superstar. Him and Drew Stubbs, I always was those are my two guys. When they were coming up, I was like, watch out, these guys are going to be studs. And obviously, I could not be a baseball scout.
I thought Drew Stubbs was a superstar too.
Oh my god, man!
I thought he was better than Hamilton.
Yes,
and Drew was good in 2010. He had a 105 OPS plus, and he played center field. He had 22 home runs. He had a really, really good first full season, and then just fell off a cliff. I think Drew Stubbs feels worse than he was, though, because I think if you look at him and then you look at Billy Hamilton, I think you go, yeah, Drew Stubbs really wasn't that bad.
There was that full year he played for the Rockies. Before he got DFA and was kind of bouncing around the league for a few years. I had him in fantasy baseball that year, and he hit 330 at Coors Field and 210 on the road. So I would only keep him on my roster, so when they had home games, I would play him every game, and everyone else I would just sit on my bench.
He probably would have had a really nice career if he played with the Rockies. I think he would have been a really solid center fielder. Obviously he could cover a ton of ground. He would have hit a ton of home runs. I think he would have, yeah, like that's one of those players, like, a lot of, these players' success is who they get drafted by, who they come up with. I think he would have had a really solid career there. I mean, I think he still made $15 million in his
Right.
baseball
He did
career.
all right.
So I'm not feeling sorry for the guy.
And Nick, I assume you're score watching right now with the Cubs, Brewers, and Cardinals all losing.
Yeah, I got them all on the screens here. So yeah, that would be a very nice nightcap.
Yeah. So I guess let's kind of talk real quick before we get out of here. So we got the like I said, the big road trip coming up. 3 games with the Indians. You got 3 games with the Pirates, and you got a 4-game set with the Rockies before you come home for the Giants and Brewers. Nick, you said don't count wins, obviously, and you're definitely right. But I think one of the big pluses in this Cleveland series is, one, you skip Shane Bieber, who's pitching tonight, and that's a big plus for them. And then, the Pirates and Rockies, who've definitely been, I think the Pirates have definitely been the overachieving team for the start of the year, and then the Rockies are just a total shit show if you're reading every report that comes out about them every week. So, like I said, like you expect a good road trip for the good guys here, but what is kind of the biggest things you're looking for in these sets?
Well, I'm hoping that they can convince Trevor Story to stay with the Reds when they go to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Just hop on the flight.
Come over.
Let's get you out of here, bud. Yeah, I mean, how many games is that? Is that 10 games? Am I doing my math right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
yep, 10.
3.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, 6 and 4 would be great. Like people go, oh man, that's you got to win 8 out of 10. No, win 6 out of 4. That's good Major League Baseball against anyone. So yeah, I mean, I think win 6 out of 10, maybe win 7 out of 10. I think you're feeling pretty good. You got favorable pitching matchups, like you said. No Bieber. They're facing some guy on Sunday in Cleveland that I've never heard of, and I live in Cleveland. I kind of keep tabs on the team, so that's good, I think. And then, I can't, knock on wood, I can't wait to see this team play in Colorado. With the way they've been hitting. Oh, man. Winker and Castellanos in Colorado, that's a 4-game series. Oh, I hope that's as much fun as it is in my head. So, yeah, I'm hoping they can find ways to just scratch across some wins, play some good baseball. The real crazy thing is, I think it's 17 games in a row starting Friday, 17 days in a row, and then like 30 out of 31. So obviously the big thing is, how's the bullpen going to hold up? I'm sure you're going to see a lot of shuffling guys back and forth, but hopefully the starters can at least be giving you, get you into the 6th inning a lot. I think that'll be really important for that stretch. And then, I think, I worry in my head a lot about, is Tyler Naquin going to get enough playing time? I think he has to be playing every day against right-handed pitching. When you're playing that many games in a row, you're going to find playing time for everyone. So, I think it'll be a big stretch for the Reds. Hopefully they can, make up some ground and hopefully maybe by the end of that, kind of have a grasp on the Central. That'd be awesome.
They're playing 30 out of 31 days.
I was just about to bring you in to ask you what that's like.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Well, after they've had like 20 off days already this year, like they have 2 off days this week. I mean, I'm guessing it's just, I'm sure trying to schedule 30 baseball teams to play throughout a year is not easy. So, like, someone's got to get screwed, and it just happens to be the Reds. So I don't think it's Major League Baseball, like with the suspensions coming at the Reds. But
we're talking about that before we leave. Don't you worry.
I have pre-prepared remarks for that.
I knew you did. I knew you did. I know we've only worked together for a couple months, but I'm starting to feel like we work together pretty well to where I know you're not. And I appreciate it. By the way, before we get into the suspension stuff, You talked about the ball at Coors Field. I'm so excited that the All-Star game got moved there. Not for the politics reasons. I understand, like, I'm glad the MLB did what they did. That was awesome. But for the baseball standpoint of this effect of, like, the home run derby at Coors Field, like, yes, please, I'm in.
The Reds have to get one guy there, please. Like,
I know.
you have to give me Castellano. I love Winker there, but I think Castellanos, he would just be so much fun. Because, like, he would just be hitting these bombs and then, like, be giving you that, like, straight face like he's going to kill you. And I want that. I want that so bad.
I agree. Completely agree. So, let's go ahead and talk about it, guys. Yes, it comes out yesterday right before the first pitch that Amir Garrett has a 7-game suspension after Saturday's issues with Javier Baez, where Amir Garrett got excited, but Javier Baez jumped over the railing in the dugout, and, you know, whatever. Baseball finds a way to say that it's Garrett's fault, and maybe he went a little too out of line, but, like, you know, for a guy that was struggling the way he was to get a big strikeout against a guy he's been kind of going, like, had a rivalry with throughout his major league career, I get it. So, Nick, your pre-prepared statements for Amir Garrett's 7-game suspension after Javier Baez is shown flipping him off and being held back by Mike Moustakas.
Right now, by the way, I'm picturing Nick getting up from his desk at court with his papers, and he's about to let everybody know.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yeah.
Nailed it. So, I mean, in seriousness, I think this is, like, multi-dimensional. I don't think this is, like, just, like, one, like, this is the way it is and this is the way it isn't. You know, I think there's a lot here. So I think the first thing, we all got to agree, like, what Garrett did was unnecessary. Like, he didn't need to do that. Like, I'm not going to, like, be out here saying, you know, oh, yeah, that's fine to do. Yeah, I mean, that's a little, above and beyond or whatever. But I don't really blame him for that. You know, the guy's been awful. That was a big strikeout of Rizzo. Yes, they were losing, but it's still a big strikeout. It was a 1-run game. You know, he's an emotional guy. He was trying to pump himself up. I think that making a big deal about what he did in the heat of the moment is kind of silly. At the same time, you can acknowledge it was unnecessary. You know, Amir, let's not do that again. It's not worth it. You know, I think Bauer actually had a pretty good take on this. You know, I don't know if you guys saw what he put up on his YouTube channel. He said the Cubs are constantly chirping during the game from the bench, so we don't know what was said. But Bauer literally just pitched in Chicago this week. I'm assuming that video was after he pitched. So, you know, he has pretty fresh in his mind, you know, the Cubs' current attitude. So, you know, if the Cubs are chirping during the game, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you know, what line in the sand are you taking here, you know, Chicago? But the main beef is just that they suspended him for 7 games. Like, that's ridiculous. You know, I think they're setting a really dangerous precedent with that. I mean, do they really want to be like the judge and jury for every situation where words are exchanged? You know, like, where's the line on this? There's no way you can treat all these situations fairly if you're doing that. And then how are you not going to suspend Baez if you suspend Garrett? You know, like, he literally jumped over the rail, put his middle finger up in the air. I don't blame Baez for that, but I don't think he should be suspended either. I don't think either guy should be suspended. But how can you, like, say he wasn't at least equally responsible for the benches clearing? You know, like, there's no punches thrown, just words exchanged. Just move on. Like, it's not the end of the world. Maybe throw a little fine out there. I don't know. I just think the MLB just hiding behind these COVID protocols. You know, when you're having players hang out before the games, you have full capacity stadiums in places. Like, let's stop hiding behind the COVID protocols. And then lastly, my biggest issue of it all is Tepera of the Cubs was suspended 3 games this year. 3 games, and it got reduced to 2 for intentionally throwing a baseball at Woodruff as retaliation. On what planet is that a lesser offense than Garrett yelling at Rizzo? That's just ridiculous, and there's no explanation for that part of it. Sorry, was that too much?
No,
I was expecting more. I
Carlos,
mean, there's
got anything to chime into that?
there's just so much wrong with this, with what happened. Like, I mean, I think the whole, you know, Amir act is, personally, I don't like it. I mean, he definitely should have done what he did. You know, yell at your bench. I mean, even if you are yelling at Tucker to help, you know, pump yourself up or whatever, you know the way it's going to be perceived. I mean, all you do is talk all off season on what you're going to do and how bad of a mofo you are and this and that. And then you struggle and then you delete your Twitter account. And then all of a sudden you get the second out of an inning and you're like, here we are. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Like Rizzo, I mean, as much as I dislike the guy because he's always putting himself in the middle of everything when it doesn't involve him. I mean, he looked at a mirror and said, oh, whatever. And went on back to the dugout, and then Baez jumps out. So now it's okay. Any other dust-ups that we have, it's okay for a player to jump over and wave to the pitcher, come on, let's go, me and you right now. But as long as he doesn't go and touch him, then there's no suspension. It's like, exactly like what Nick said, where are you going to draw the line? Like, there's so much wrong with what happened because there wouldn't have been an incident unless Baez jumped over and decided to be part of the fight.
Yeah, because what was the Phillies Mets game Friday? There was like the bench clearing incident, and the pitcher got 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
and I mean, that was 7 games is definitely like the fact that he's a repeat offender and. Listen, you're going to miss more than 7 games here if you keep doing this. Because he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do that to pump himself up. Look at your team. Look at your dugout. Do whatever. Wait till it's the 3rd out of a bigger crowd where everybody can't hear what you're saying because we know that you have everything planned out that you're going to do. There's everything seems to be like planned out. There's no like real raw emotion in my eyes. And from what I've seen with playing with players and seeing him, the way that he's acting, it's all premeditated.
Talking about repeat offender just gave me like very bad flashbacks of Vontez Perfect. Like, not that I'm comparing what he does to what Amir did by any means, because it's a totally different story. But just remember like hearing those like, oh, I suspended again. Okay, kind of thing. Yeah, so I completely agree with you both. I think that we obviously have been talking all year about just like the ups and downs and unfairness of like the decision making of the suspensions and the Manfred era, and you name it, we've talked about it. And obviously, I know I'm one of probably 40 million people who have tweeted "Let's the kids play" is utter bullshit. I'll stand by it. But
it
hey,
is.
I guess yeah, it totally is. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here, guys. Before we get out of here, anything you guys want to say? Anything else you want to touch on?
Well, the Brewers just lost, so let's celebrate that.
Let's celebrate, yes.
Looks like the Cardinals are going to lose. They're down 6-1, and the Cubs are down 3-2. So this could be a really nice night for the Reds. Off day tomorrow, and let's hope this time next week we're talking about the Reds in a really, really good spot. I like this team a lot. I think this team is flawed. But I think every team in this division is very, very flawed.
Yes.
I think most teams in the National League are flawed, not just the Central. So yeah, I think the Reds are going to be in this thing all year. I think when we get to that end of that 30 of 31, I think we'll really kind of get a little bit better of a sense. But I think it's going to be an up and down year. Jump on the roller coaster. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, like you said, though. I mean, the Dodgers have lost 8 of 12, talking about flawed teams.
No, I'm still over here waiting for my Padres bats to start warming up, tied with the Pirates.
It's coming. It's coming. Are you worried about Fernando Tatis, by the way, with his, 37 errors?
No, not at all.
Okay. Just making sure. Well, gentlemen, it's definitely always a pleasure. I always appreciate it. I'm happy that we got the 3 of us working on this together now. So if you are listening on Spotify, like we said, we do this live on Locker Room every week. Come hang out with us. Come talk with us. We'd love to have you. Even if you're checking out Nick's YouTube channel, we definitely appreciate everything. And we're open to any feedback. So thank you all again. Have a good night and go Red Legs.